You want me to take a lie detector test to prove I love you?
Yes.
My house has more cameras than a Vegas casino. Too bad I never pointed them at my own marriage. The name's Rylan Ventor, and I install security systems for people who think money can buy them safety. 38 years old, decent at my job, terrible at reading the signs when my own life gets burglarized from the inside out. I pulled into my driveway at 8:30 on a Tuesday night, 3 days early from a conference in Dallas. The porch light was on, which was normal. Kalia's Honda in the driveway, also normal. The unfamiliar black pickup truck parked where I usually put my car. That was new. I sat there for a moment, engine ticking as it cooled, staring at that truck. Texas plates, clean as a whistle. One of those lifted jobs that screamed, I compensate for things. My wife, Kalia, worked in HR at a medical supply company. Her friends drove sensible cars and worried about their carbon footprints. This wasn't her crowd. The front door opened before I could decide whether to be suspicious or just curious. Kalia stepped out, all smiles and waving, wearing the blue dress I'd bought her for our anniversary. Behind her came a man I'd never seen before. Tall, broad shoulders, the kind of tan that comes from outdoor work or a really good gym membership. Rylan, you're home early. Kalia's voice had that bright, artificial quality she used when talking to difficult customers. This is Brent Marrow. He owns that new fitness center on Maple Street. Brent stepped forward with the confidence of a man who'd never been told no about anything important. His handshake was firm enough to crack walnuts. Great to finally meet you, Rylan. Kalia's told me so much about you. Has she now? I kept my voice level, but something cold was already settling in my chest. And how do you two know each other? We went to high school together. Kalia jumped in. He just moved back to town and looked me up. Isn't that sweet? Sweet wasn't the word I'd have chosen. The way Brent's eyes lingered on my wife, the casual way his hand touched her elbow when he talked, none of that struck me as particularly sweet. I was just leaving, Brent said, though he made no move toward his truck. Kalia invited me for dinner. Hope that's okay. I looked at my wife. She was still smiling, but there was something desperate around her eyes now. Of course it's okay. Our home is always open to old friends. The lie tasted bitter, even as I said it. I watched Brent climb into his compensator mobile and drive away, then followed Kalia inside. The dining room table was set for two. Wine glasses, good china, candles that had burned down to waxy stubs. Romantic dinner for an old high school friend? I asked. Kalia was already clearing the table, moving with quick, nervous energy. Don't be ridiculous. I just wanted to be nice. He's going through a rough divorce. Aren't we all? She froze, a wine glass halfway to the kitchen. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing. Just making conversation. But it wasn't nothing, and we both knew it. I walked to my home office and closed the door, then pulled up the security system on my computer. My house might be wired like Fort Knox, but I'd never bothered monitoring the interior cameras. Privacy, respect for my wife, all those noble concepts that seemed pretty stupid right about now. I scrolled through the footage from earlier that evening. There was Kalia setting the table at 6 o'clock. Brent arriving at 6:30 with flowers. Flowers I hadn't seen anywhere in the house. The two of them sitting close together, her hand on his arm, both of them laughing at something on his phone. Then, at 7:45, Brent leaning across the table. Kalia meeting him halfway. A long, slow kiss that had nothing to do with high school friendships. I sat back in my chair and stared at the frozen image on my screen. 15 years of marriage, and this was how I found out it was over. Not a conversation, not a fight, not even a Dear John letter, just a random early arrival and a security camera I'd never bothered to check. My phone buzzed with a text from Kalia. Coming to bed soon? I typed back, in a few minutes, just catching up on work. Work. Right. The kind of work that involved transferring our joint savings into an account she couldn't access. The kind of work that meant canceling her credit cards and changing the passwords on our shared accounts. The kind of work that a security systems expert could do very quietly, very thoroughly, and very legally. By the time I went to bed, Kalia was already asleep, or pretending to be. I lay there in the dark, listening to her breathe, and planned my next move. The thing about security systems is that they're only as good as the person monitoring them, and I just become very, very interested in monitoring mine. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Kalia's credit card got declined at the gas station the next morning. I was in my office, pretending to review client files while actually watching her through the kitchen security camera, when her phone started ringing. 5 calls in 10 minutes, each one more frantic than the last. "Rylan." Her voice carried down the hallway, sweet as artificial honey. "Can you come here for a minute?" I found her in the kitchen, phone clutched in one hand, car keys in the other. She'd dressed carefully, the red blouse that used to be my favorite, hair done just right, makeup perfect, getting ready to see someone who wasn't her husband. "There's something wrong with my credit card," she said. "The bank says the account's been frozen." "That's strange." I poured myself coffee, taking my time. "Maybe you should call them." I did call them. They said you put a hold on all our joint accounts yesterday night. I met her eyes over my coffee mug. "Did I?" "Rylan, what's going on?" "I'm protecting our assets. You know how identity theft works these days, can't be too careful." She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see the wheels turning. How much did I know? How much could she bluff her way through? "I need access to our money," she said finally. "For what?" "For normal things, groceries, gas, the usual." "I can handle the groceries. As for gas, well, maybe you don't need to drive around as much." Her face went pale, then flushed red. "You can't just cut me off from our own money." "Our money?" I set down my coffee mug with deliberate care. "Funny thing about that, Kalia. I checked our account activity last night. A lot of interesting charges over the past few months. Restaurants I've never been to, hotels I've never stayed at, gifts I never received." The color drained from her face completely now. "I can explain." "I'm sure you can. But right now, I need to get to work. Some of us still have jobs to do." I left her standing in the kitchen and drove to my office, but I didn't stay long. Instead, I made a few calls, set up a few appointments, and then drove across town to have a conversation with my cousin Tanner. Tanner lived in one of those cookie-cutter subdivisions where every house looked exactly the same except for the color of the shutters. His wife Jennifer answered the door with a baby on her hip and suspicion in her eyes. "Rylan, what are you doing here?" "Need to talk to Tanner. Family business." She called for her husband, who appeared looking guilty about something. Tanner always looked guilty about something. It was his default expression. "Hey, cuz, what's up?" "Can we talk privately?" We went out to his garage, where Tanner kept his tools and his beer. He offered me one, but I shook my head. "Kalia's been talking to you," I said. It wasn't a question. Tanner's guilty expression deepened. "About what?" "About me, about our marriage, about how I'm not the man she thought she married." "Look, Rylan, I don't want to get in the middle of—" "You're already in the middle." I pulled out my phone and showed him the security footage from last night. Tanner's face went white as he watched his cousin's wife kissing another man at their dinner table. "Jesus, Rylan, I had no idea." "But she called you, didn't she? Told you I was being controlling, maybe even dangerous? Asked you to back her up if things got ugly?" Tanner couldn't meet my eyes. "She said you'd been acting strange, paranoid. She was worried about you." "Worried about me or worried about getting caught?" "Both, maybe." I put my phone away. "Here's what's going to happen, Tanner. When Kalia calls you again, and she will, you're going to tell her you can't help her. You're going to tell her that family loyalty goes both ways, and she stopped being family the moment she decided to cheat on me. And if I don't, then I'll make sure Jennifer sees this footage. And I'll make sure she knows you knew about it and didn't tell me." Tanner sagged against his workbench. "That's not fair." "Fair?" I laughed, but there wasn't any humor in it. "You want to talk about fair? Fair would have been my wife talking to me instead of spreading her legs for her high school boyfriend. Fair would have been my family having my back instead of helping her plan my humiliation. But we're way past fair now, cousin." I left him there with his beer and his guilt and drove home. Kalia's car was gone, but I knew she'd be back. She had nowhere else to go. I'd made sure of that. My phone rang as I pulled into the driveway. Unknown number. "Rylan, this is Brent Marrow. I think we need to talk." "Do we now?" "Man to man, about Kalia." "What about her?" "Look, I know this is awkward, but I care about her. She's scared, Rylan, scared of what you might do." I almost laughed. "What I might do? Brent, buddy, you have no idea what I'm capable of." "Is that a threat?" "It's a promise. Stay away from my wife. Stay away from my house. Stay away from my life." "And if I don't?" I looked up at my house, at all those security cameras, at all the technology I'd installed to keep the bad guys out. Funny how the real threat had been sitting at my dinner table all along. "Then you'll find out why people pay me to protect them." I hung up and walked inside. The house felt different now, not like a home, but like a fortress under siege, which I supposed it was. My phone buzzed with a text from Kalia. "We need to talk when I get home." I typed back, Should have picked a better dinner guest. The war was just beginning. Kalia came home at midnight with a lawyer. I was waiting in the living room, reviewing the security footage from the past 3 months on my laptop. Amazing what you could see when you actually bothered to look. Brent's truck in my driveway every Tuesday and Thursday while I was at work, Kalia sneaking out at odd hours, the two of them in my backyard, in my pool, on my deck furniture. "Rylan, this is Ms. Hodge," Kalia announced. "She's going to help us work through this situation." Ms. Hodge was one of those sharp-dressed women who charged by the hour and specialized in making men's lives miserable. She had the look of someone who'd never lost a case and didn't plan to start now. "Mr. Ventor, I understand you've taken some unilateral action regarding your marital assets. I've protected them, yes, by freezing accounts your wife has legal access to, by preventing further unauthorized expenditures." I turned my laptop around so they could see the screen. "Would you like to review those expenditures, counselor?" Ms. Hodge glanced at the footage, and her professional composure slipped just a little. "Mr. Ventor, regardless of any alleged indiscretions..." "Alleged?" I clicked to another video file. "This is my backyard, counselor. That's my wife and her boyfriend using my hot tub. Would you like me to fast forward to the interesting parts?" Kalia's face went red. "You've been spying on me." "I've been monitoring my own property. There's a difference." Ms. Hodge cleared her throat. "Perhaps we could discuss a temporary arrangement." "No arrangement." I closed the laptop. Kalia made her choice. Now she gets to live with the consequences. "Rylan, please." Kalia's voice cracked. "I made a mistake. We can work through this." "A mistake?" I stood up, and something in my expression made both women take a step back. "A mistake is forgetting to pick up milk. A mistake is bouncing a check. What you did was plan and execute a betrayal. What you did was invite another man into my home, into my bed, into my life, and then lie to my face about it for months." "It wasn't like that." "It was exactly like that." I pulled out my phone. Should I call Brent? Ask him how it felt to eat my food, drink my bourbon, and screw my wife in my house? Ms. Hodge stepped between us. "Mr. Ventor, I understand you're upset, but threatening behavior..." "I'm not threatening anyone. I'm simply explaining the situation. Kalia chose to end our marriage. I'm just making sure she doesn't profit from that choice." "The law doesn't work that way," Ms. Hodge said. "Doesn't it?" I smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. "Tell me, counselor, what's the penalty for adultery in Texas? What happens to community property when one spouse can prove the other was unfaithful?" Ms. Hodge's confident expression faltered. She knew the law as well as I did. "I think this consultation is over," I said. "Kalia, you can stay here tonight, but tomorrow you need to find somewhere else to live. Somewhere that isn't my house." "This is my house, too." "Not anymore." After they left, I sat in my empty living room and planned my next move. The thing about revenge is that it's like a security system. It only works if you think 3 steps ahead. I started by calling Detective Morales, my neighbor from 2 streets over. We'd had a few barbecues together, shared a few beers, complained about property taxes and city council meetings. "Rylan, it's pretty late for a social call. Sorry to bother you, Frank, but I wanted to give you a heads up. My wife and I are going through a rough patch. There might be some domestic disturbance calls from my address." "Sorry to hear that. Anything I should know about?" "Just that she's been having an affair, and now she's threatening to make things ugly. I've got everything documented, but you know how these things go." "Jesus, I'm sorry, man." Kalia seemed like such a nice woman. "They always do." After I hung up, I made my second call. This one was to my business partner, letting him know I might need some time off to handle personal matters. Then I called my lawyer, my accountant, and my insurance agent. By the time I was done, I had a paper trail that would make a forensic accountant weep with joy. Every transaction, every lie, every secret meeting documented and cross-referenced. But the paperwork was just the beginning. The real fun would start tomorrow, when I began sharing my discoveries with the right people. Kalia's mother, Bree, for instance. The woman who'd always treated me like I wasn't good enough for her precious daughter. She was going to be very interested to learn what her precious daughter had been up to. And Brent? Well, Brent was about to discover that messing with other people's marriages could be bad for business. I went to bed that night with a smile on my face for the first time in months. Tomorrow was going to be a very interesting day. Bree Marrow showed up at my office Friday afternoon, dressed in her country club finest and radiating the kind of righteous indignation that only comes with years of practice. "How dare you humiliate my daughter," she announced, loud enough for the entire office to hear. I looked up from my computer, where I'd been reviewing the security footage from Kalia's little romantic getaway attempt. She'd tried to book a weekend at the Marriott downtown using our joint credit card. the same card I'd canceled 3 days ago. Mrs. Marrow, what a pleasant surprise. Don't you dare take that tone with me, Rylan Ventor. Kalia is devastated, absolutely devastated. I imagine she is. I leaned back in my chair. Finding out that your secret boyfriend has a secret girlfriend tends to be devastating. Bree's face went white. What are you talking about? I turned my computer screen toward her. Meet Cassandra Phillips. She's been dating Brent for 6 months. Apparently, he forgot to mention that when he was romancing your daughter. The footage was from Brent's gym, courtesy of their publicly accessible Instagram account. Brent and a blonde woman in matching workout gear, tagged as Calmer couple goals and Ronder fitness journey. The timestamp was from 2 days ago. That's impossible, Bree whispered. Is it? Or did you just assume that any man would be lucky to have Kalia, regardless of what else might be going on in his life? Bree sank into the chair across from my desk. For the first time since I'd known her, she looked old. She really loves him, she said quietly. No, she doesn't. She loves the idea of him. The high school boyfriend who got away, the bad boy who makes her feel young again. But love? Real love doesn't involve lying to your husband and sneaking around behind his back. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. I closed the laptop. I understand that you never thought I was good enough for your daughter. I understand that you encouraged her to keep her options open. I understand that when Brent came back to town, you probably told her she deserved to be happy, even if it meant destroying her marriage. Bree's silence was all the confirmation I needed. Here's what's going to happen, I continued. You're going to go home and think very carefully about the advice you've been giving your daughter. Because if you keep pushing her toward Brent, she's going to end up with nothing. No husband, no boyfriend, no money, and no dignity. You can't just cut her off. I can, and I have. The only question now is whether she comes to her senses before she loses everything. Bree left without another word, but I knew she'd be back. Women like her didn't give up easily. My phone rang an hour later. Kalia calling from her mother's house. Rylan, we need to talk. Do we? Mom told me about Cassandra. Did she now? Is it true? Does Brent have a girlfriend? I almost laughed. After everything she'd put me through, she was still more concerned about her boyfriend's loyalty than her husband's feelings. Why don't you ask him? I tried. He's not answering his phone. Maybe he's busy. Friday night, after all. Date night. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. Rylan, I know I messed up. I know I hurt you. But we can fix this. We can go to counseling, work through our problems. Our problems? Now I did laugh. Kalia, we don't have problems. You have problems. You have a boyfriend who's cheating on you while you're cheating on me. You have a mother who thinks marriage is disposable. You have a husband who's documented every lie you've told for the past 6 months. What do you mean, documented? I mean, I have evidence, Kalia. Lots of evidence. Photos, videos, credit card records, phone logs. Everything a divorce lawyer could ever want. You wouldn't try me. She hung up, but I knew she'd call back. They always called back. Instead, my next call came from Brent. He sounded drunk and angry, which was exactly what I'd been hoping for. You son of a dog, he slurred. What did you tell Cassandra? The truth. That you've been having an affair with a married woman. You're not what, Brent? You're not screwing my wife. You're not taking her to hotels on my credit card. You're not planning to run away together once the divorce goes through. How do you? Never mind. This isn't over, Ventor. You're right. It's not over. It's just getting started. I hung up and smiled. By Monday, half the town would know about Brent's double life. The other half would know about Kalia's affair, and both of them would know that I wasn't the kind of man who rolled over and played victim when someone tried to destroy his life. The weekend was going to be very interesting indeed. Monday morning brought chaos. I was in my office reviewing security camera footage from the weekend when my assistant Maya knocked on the door. Mr. Ventor, there's a Detective Morales here to see you. Frank looked tired and slightly amused as he settled into the chair across from my desk. Hell of a weekend, Rylan. Was it? 3 domestic disturbance calls, 1 vandalism report, 2 noise complaints, and a very interesting conversation with Brent Marrow about harassment. I raised an eyebrow. Harassment? He seems to think you're responsible for some anonymous tips that got sent to his girlfriend, his business partners, and half his gym membership. Anonymous tips about what? About his affair with your wife. Frank leaned back in his chair. Of course, anonymous tips aren't illegal. Neither is sharing publicly available information about someone's personal life. I wouldn't know anything about that. Of course you wouldn't, Frank grinned. Just like you wouldn't know anything about how someone managed to get into the gym's social media accounts and post some very interesting photos. I'd spent Sunday evening doing exactly that, but Frank didn't need to know the details. The photos, Brent and Kalia at various restaurants and hotels around town, had been posted to the gym's Instagram story with the caption, "When you're supposed to be working out, but you're working on someone else's marriage instead." Sounds like someone with a grudge, I said. Sounds like someone with computer skills and access to a lot of surveillance footage. We stared at each other for a moment, two men who understood exactly what was happening but couldn't say it out loud. "Brent wants to press charges," Frank said finally. "For what?" That's what I told him. Can't press charges against someone for telling the truth. "And what's the truth, detective?" "The truth is that your wife's been cheating on you. Her boyfriend's been cheating on her, and you've been documenting everything like the careful man you are." Frank stood up. "The truth is that some people make their own problems and then blame everyone else when those problems come home to roost." After he left, I pulled up the gym's social media accounts on my computer. The photos had been shared over 200 times in less than 24 hours. The comments were brutal. "Isn't that the married woman from the medical supply company? My wife goes to this gym. Not anymore. Disgusting. What kind of business owner behaves like this? Someone should tell his girlfriend." Someone had, of course. I'd made sure Cassandra got copies of everything, along with a helpful timeline of Brent's relationship with my wife. She'd responded by showing up at the gym Sunday morning and having a very loud, very public confrontation with her cheating boyfriend. The whole thing had been captured by the gym's own security cameras and somehow found its way onto social media. Brent's reputation was in ruins. His business was hemorrhaging members, and his love life had exploded in spectacular fashion. My phone rang. Kalia again. "Rylan, you have to stop this." "Stop what?" "You know what? The photos, the rumors, the harassment. People are calling me at work. My boss wants to see me this afternoon." "Sounds like a personal problem." "This is destroying my life." "Your life was already destroyed, Kalia. I'm just making sure everyone else knows it." "I'll fight you. I'll take you to court. You'll what? Hire another lawyer with money you don't have? File papers with a judge who'll take one look at the evidence and laugh you out of the courtroom?" She was crying now. Ugly sobs that might have moved me 6 months ago. Now they just sounded like the natural consequence of her choices. "I have nothing left," she whispered. "You have exactly what you chose to have. A cheating boyfriend who doesn't want you anymore, a mother who gave you terrible advice, and a reputation that matches your character. You win, okay? You win. Just please, make it stop." "I didn't start this game, Kalia. You did. You just picked the wrong chair to play it from." I hung up and looked out my office window at the parking lot, where my car sat next to a dozen others belonging to people who went to work every day, paid their bills, and didn't screw around on their spouses. Normal people living normal lives, unaware that their neighbor had just won a war they never wanted to fight. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This isn't over." I typed back, "Yes, it is." But I was wrong. It wasn't over. Not yet. They came for me on Thursday night. I was in my home office, reviewing client files and enjoying the silence of a house that no longer felt like a battlefield, when the security system chimed. Motion detected at the back door. I pulled up the camera feed and smiled. Kalia, Brent, and Bree huddled together on my back patio like a trio of amateur burglars. Kalia had a key, or thought she did. I'd changed the locks 3 days ago. I watched them fumble with the door for several minutes before switching to the front camera. More movement there. Detective Morales' patrol car parked across the street. Frank had probably gotten wind of their plan and decided to keep an eye on things. Smart man. I activated the exterior floodlights and opened the back door before they could break it down. "Evening, folks. Can I help you?" Kalia jumped like she'd been shocked. Brent tried to look tough, which was difficult given that his face was still bruised from his weekend confrontation with Cassandra. Bree just looked old and tired. "We want our things," Kalia said. "Your things?" "My clothes, my jewelry, my personal items." "Ah." I stepped aside and gestured for them to enter. "By all means, come in." They filed past me into the kitchen, and I could smell the alcohol on Brent's breath. Liquid courage for whatever they had planned. "Upstairs," Kalia said, heading for the staircase. "Actually, I think we should have a conversation first." I moved to block their path. "All of us, together, like civilized people." "We don't have anything to say to you," Bree snapped. "Don't you? Because I have quite a bit to say to all of you." I walked to the living room and settled into my favorite chair, the same chair where I'd discovered my wife's betrayal less than 2 weeks ago. They followed reluctantly, Brent's hands clenched into fists, Kalia's eyes darting toward the stairs. "You know what I've learned about people?" I began conversationally. "They always think they're the hero of their own story. Take Kalia here. She probably tells herself that she was trapped in a loveless marriage, that she deserved to be happy, that I drove her into another man's arms." "That's not," Kalia started. "And Brent." I turned to face him. "I bet you tell yourself that you were rescuing her, that you were giving her the love and attention she wasn't getting at home, that it wasn't really cheating because her marriage was already over." Brent's jaw tightened, but he didn't respond. "And Bree, you probably convinced yourself that you were protecting your daughter, that you were helping her find her way back to happiness, that I was the problem all along." "You are the problem," Bree said coldly. "You're a vindictive, controlling—" "I'm a man who got played," I interrupted. "A man who trusted the wrong people and paid the price for it. But I'm also a man who learns from his mistakes." I pulled out my phone and opened the security app. "For instance, I learned that people who betray you once will betray you again. I learned that people who lie to you will lie about you, and I learned that the only way to deal with people like that is to make sure everyone knows exactly who they are." "What are you doing?" Kalia asked nervously. "I'm sharing our conversation with the world." I held up the phone so they could see the live stream notification. "Say hello to Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. You're all famous now." Brent lunged for the phone, but I was ready for him. I stepped aside and he crashed into the coffee table, sending magazines and remotes flying. "Careful there, Brent. Wouldn't want to add assault charges to your already impressive list of accomplishments." "Turn it off," Kalia pleaded. "Please, Rylan, people are watching." People should watch. They should see what happens when someone tries to steal another person's life. They should see the consequences of betrayal. I looked directly into the camera. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like you to meet my wife Kalia, her boyfriend Brent, and her mother Bree. These 3 people conspired to destroy my marriage, steal my assets, and ruin my reputation. They thought they were smarter than me. They thought they could get away with it." "Stop," Bree whispered. "They were wrong." I smiled at the camera. "You see, I'm a security expert. I know how to protect things, I know how to gather evidence, and I know how to make sure that people who hurt me never get the chance to hurt anyone else." The live stream viewer count was climbing rapidly. Comments were pouring in, most of them supportive, some of them brutal. The 3 people in my living room were being dissected by strangers in real time. "This is harassment," Brent said, but his voice lacked conviction. "This is justice. This is what happens when you mess with the wrong person's life." Thunder rumbled outside, and rain began pattering against the windows. A perfect dramatic timing. "I want everyone watching to remember this moment," I continued. "Remember what these 3 people look like. Remember their names. Remember that actions have consequences and betrayal has a price." Kalia was sobbing now, her carefully applied makeup running down her cheeks. Brent was staring at his phone, probably watching his business and reputation crumble in real time. Bree just looked broken. "The show's over, folks," I announced. "Time for you to leave." They stumbled toward the door like refugees from a disaster zone, which, in a way, they were. I followed them onto the porch, still streaming, still smiling. "Next time," I called after them as they hurried toward Brent's truck, "I'm eating out." Lightning flashed across the sky, illuminating their retreat. I stayed on the porch until they were gone, then ended the live stream and went back inside. The house felt clean again. Empty, but clean. My phone was buzzing with notifications, comments, shares, friend requests from strangers who'd watched the confrontation. I ignored them all and poured myself a drink. Outside, the storm was getting worse, but inside my fortress of cameras and locks and carefully documented evidence, I was finally at peace. The chair was mine again, and this time I wasn't giving it up.